It feels like the world is in a constant state of flux, right? Alliances are shifting, the old rules seem to be breaking, and new conflicts are popping up at lightning speed. In this explainer, we're going to try and untangle these really complex threads to get a clearer picture of where the world is heading, right now.
So first things first, let's just ground ourselves in today's date, September 5th, 2025, because the decisions being made and the things we're seeing unfold today, they're not just tomorrow's headlines. Nope, they are the very foundation of the world we're all going to be living in for years, even decades to come.
And that leads us to the big question that's kind of hanging over everything. For decades, we've had this US-led system that was pretty much the default. But as we're about to see, the pieces on the global chessboard are moving in some new and frankly pretty unpredictable ways.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with what we're calling the Great Power Shuffle. Then we'll see how that's affecting old conflicts with new rules. After that, we'll dive into the future of conflict itself. And finally, we'll try to figure out what it all means as we're navigating this new era.
All right, first up, the Great Power Shuffle. And really, the single biggest development here is this new axis forming between Russia, China, and India. This isn't just some friendly get-together. It's a strategic triangle that could totally change the global balance of power.
So what's really pulling these three heavyweights together? Well, if you look here, each one has its own reason, but they all point to the same thing, pushing back against the current US-led order. For Russia, it's about breaking out of isolation. For China, it's about building a world with multiple powers. And for India, it's all about getting more leverage. See how their interests are all lining up against the way things are?
And if you're wondering what that pressure on India actually looks like in real terms, well, here it is, 25%. That's the number for new U.S. tariffs slapped on Indian goods. It's a direct economic squeeze, and it suddenly makes partnering up with Russia and China look like a much more attractive option for New Delhi.
Okay, so this big shuffle, it's not happening in some kind of bubble, right? It's sending shockwaves out into conflicts that have been going on for years, totally changing the rules of the game on these old battlegrounds.
Let's look at the Caucasus, for example. There's this new U.S. brokered peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and it's created something called the Trip Corridor. Now, on the surface, okay, it's a road. But if you look deeper, it is so much more than that.
And this is the really crucial part. The route is specifically designed to go around both Russia and Iran. It's a clear geopolitical play to weaken their influence in the region and open up a new corridor for Western interests. Its strategy made pavement.
But it's not just the usual superpowers making all the moves anymore. We're seeing this dramatic rise of what you might call middle powers. In a recent clash between India and Pakistan, this number, over 400, is huge. That's how many Turkish drones Pakistan reportedly used. It's a perfect example of how tech from a country like Turkey is completely reshaping modern warfare.
And make no mistake, this isn't just about selling some hardware. As this quote spells out, it's a deliberate strategy. Turkey is using its growing defense industry to position itself as a central power, basically elbowing its way to a more influential seat at the global table.
Meanwhile, the world's attention is also intensely focused on the escalating crisis in Gaza. The UN is sounding every alarm it has. They're pointing to intensified military operations that have leveled 70% of the infrastructure. And with access for humanitarian aid just dwindling, they're using the most serious language possible, a humanitarian catastrophe of epic proportions.
So, this great power competition isn't just about changing the rules on old battlefields. It's actually creating entirely new ones, from the digital world of cyberspace all the way to outer space.
Okay, we've got to talk about a term you're probably hearing a lot more lately, hybrid warfare. Think of it as conflict that happens in the gray zone, and experts are expecting Russia to really ramp up these kinds of tactics against Europe.
So forget what you think of as traditional warfare. We're talking about cyber attacks that could knock out a power grid, disinformation campaigns to mess with elections, or even GPS jamming that could cripple air travel. The whole point is to create chaos and test your opponent's limits without ever firing a single conventional shot. And up in the skies, the game of cat and mouse is constant. When China sends its most advanced J-20 stealth fighters into the Korea Strait, it's doing two things at once. On a technical level, they're hunting for blind spots in Allied radar. But on a political level, they're sending a very, very loud message.
And believe it or not, this rivalry is literally pushing beyond our own planet. A new space race is on. But this time, the prize isn't just planting a flag. It's about setting up a permanent base on the moon. NASA's plan to build a nuclear reactor up there? That's a direct strategic move to get ahead of China and Russia in this brand new frontier.
All right, so after all that,
What does this global flux, all this instability, actually mean for the world economy? How does all this geopolitical drama affect global markets, and maybe even your wallet?
Look, this stuff isn't just happening out there. It has very real consequences for all of us. The tensions we've been talking about, from trade wars to regional fights, they directly lead to messed up supply chains, higher prices at the gas pump, and inflation that makes everything more expensive. It just makes the whole global economy a much more volatile and unpredictable place.
And that really brings us full circle, back to the single most critical takeaway from all of this. We are, without a doubt, shifting away from a world with one clear superpower to a world with many centers of power, each with its own agenda. And so, we're left with the defining question of our time. For decades, we knew the answer. But in this new world, who writes the rules?